We're well into springtime now, but this week we're stepping back out into the cold to take on the Arctic Articunos. And there's a familiar face on that team. Articuno isn't just their mascot, it's on their roster too, with its trusty partner Alolan Ninetales. You know I love Articuno, I made like an hour-long video about it. And here it is. This week, though, the enemy. In fact, they have a lot of very strong ice types on this team. Not only the Articuno and the Ninetales, but also Baxcalibur is an absolute physical powerhouse. And Alolan Sandslash is a very strong Slush Rush abuser with the Steel typing also benefiting it in various ways. On top of all of that, on top of all that powerful ice spam, they also have the Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon, which I believe was the only Ogerpon that anyone drafted this season, throwing off just unbelievably strong attacks. They have a second grass type in the Sceptile that can go super speedy with Unburden and open holes or run interference for their team. They have bulky pieces rounding out the defensive synergy in Melodic and Donphan. They have Dedenne for a fast disruptive support that can spam paralysis and whatnot. Stantler to give them a Trick Room mode where maybe they go slow Sandslash, slow Baxcalibur, Donphan, Melodic, what have you. That option is available to them as well. And the newest member of their team actually is this Grookey. They've only picked it up this week. In fact, the player who drafted Grookey dropped it, I think we all knew that they for a while that they wanted to do, and in less than 20 minutes, the Articunos had scooped it up. And I'm not going to lie, at first that felt kind of targeted, because of course I brought an electric terrain mode to a number of my sets, as well as rain, and they have a way to fight for weather control with Alolan Ninetales, but they didn't have a passive terrain setter until they picked up the Grookey. That said, I don't think they're actually thinking just about this matchup specifically. I think they do like having that option here, but Grookey makes a lot of sense for their team independent of this matchup, because of course the grassy terrain gives priority to Ogerpon's Grassy Glide, and it gives them a reliable way to activate Unburden on Sceptile with a Grassy Seed. I actually kind of wondered when I was starting to look at this matchup whether they might bring Electric Seed Sceptile and just hope that it worked out, but obviously getting their own Unburden activation with the grassy terrain is far more reliable than that. I also want to acknowledge, I think this is a really well-constructed draft team. There are a lot of really smart synergies in how these pieces fit together. So Ogerpon, of course, is the single scariest Pokemon here. I mean, there's Baxcalibur, but Ogerpon, I think, is the one. And if you want to terrestrialize around both of Ogerpon's stabs, there are two types available that resist both of them, right? You can go Terra Fire, which Ogerpon can kind of cover itself with Stomping Tantrum, plus they have the Melodic, they have the Donphan, the Baxcalibur might be able to help out. Or if you go Terra Dragon, then you're weak to their Ice Spam, and you've probably just set yourself up for a bad time later in the game. I also really like the Melodic as the bulky water on this team, because this is a team that has a lot of very strong physical offense while not being very weak to burns. You can't burn the Ogerpon, you can't burn the Baxcalibur. So an opponent who has a Pokemon with Intimidate is strongly incentivized to bring that here, but then they make the Melodic that much harder to deal with. And again, this is a team that is probably going to go fast a lot of the time and has some very good pieces for it, like the Sceptile, the Ogerpon, the Sandslash, but the Stantler Trick Room mode is definitely something that I found myself keeping an eye on more and more as I was trying to prepare this week, because I definitely think it's something that they might bring into my team that also tends to go very fast. I meant to say up front, I'll say it now, the coach of the Arctic Articunos is Reckless Trico, who I think is the only other PDL coach making videos this season, so of course I'll put the channel in the description, surely. Tell me if I forgot to do that. But as we get into the Pokemon that I'm bringing, I generally try to have some kind of logical flow to the order in which I present them, and often I try to sort of capture what I was thinking as I went through in the builder and made those choices. So this might seem like kind of an odd Pokemon to start off with, but it really was my first thought as I looked at the matchup. I looked at all of these threats that Trico has, and I thought, well, I'm definitely bringing Magmar. Magmar, of course, as a fire type, as a bulky fire type, has a lot of defensive utility that I don't really have on any other Pokemon into a ton of their threats before terrestrializing, since it resists the ice attacks from all four of their ice types, the grass attacks from all three of their grass types. It resists Ogerpon's Ivy Cudgel. Obviously, it does have weaknesses in their matchup. Their team is too well built to avoid that, but I think that Magmar has so much defensive utility, and then of course with the Follow Me and the Helping Hand, it can enable its teammates to get some openings to hopefully break through. There was no way I wasn't bringing it. I also want to give a shout out to Pokemon Showdown, because this Magmar set is the very first time that that I benefited from the new feature that tells you if you're running an inefficient EV spread and suggests a more efficient one. I did have an inefficient spread on this Magmar, and Showdown fixed it for me. Hence the calm nature, even though I don't have very much special defense investment, taking advantage of Magmar's naturally higher special defense compared to its physical defense. Even as I was going for a very physically bulky set, because I want this taking Ivy Cudgel, I want it taking potentially like Wood Hammer, I want it taking potential Ice and Steel attacks from Baxcalibur and Sandslash. Very physically bulky Magmar, but I get what special bulk I can afford thanks to Showdown fixing my inefficiencies. Good for it. As far as the moves go, Follow Me and Helping Hand they don't really need any explanation. They keep the team alive a little bit longer or help them break through. Heat Wave is pretty safe. I mean, it does buff Baxcalibur if it hits that, so I have to keep that in mind, but otherwise it's pretty safe to throw off into this Ice Spam team. And I've gone with Brick Break instead of something like Clear Smog or Taunt, because of course Trico's team is set up to benefit quite a lot from the snow in terms of defensive utility, and has at least one good Aurora Veil setter in Ninetales. I actually haven't checked whether Sandslash gets Aurora Veil. Before checking, my guess is it probably does. But they definitely have options to get that extra bulk, and I don't want to let them have that. And I'm not going to be fighting for weather control this week. Maybe I should, but that's not what I've built here, so the Brick Break is how I deal with Aurora Veil instead. Terra Fairy on the Magmar, because there was simply no way to calc for Baxcalibur's Glaive Rush. That attack is simply too strong. I was not going to engineer my Pokemon to take it. And there's not much opportunity cost to running Terra Fairy this week. Again, because their team is so well constructed offensively, for the most part, defensive Terra types in this matchup that cover for one thing, open up weaknesses elsewhere among their many giant threats. And that's something that I'm just living with on my other Pokemon, but Fairy is kind of an exception. Terra Fairy is a good, as it sometimes is, as it is in some VGC formats, it's just a good neutral defensive type into this team. So there's not much that I lose by running it. I don't know. I open up a weakness to Sandslash, but not really anything else significant that I can think of right now. And it's the only way that this is taking a Glaive Rush if I get into a situation where that feels important. Next, another Pokemon that seemed like a very obvious spring when I looked at the matchup. Maybe too obvious, but I'm not going to run bad things because I'm trying to Galaxy Brain it. We're bringing our trusty Iron Treads. Iron Treads this week has... I mean, the EVs look complicated, but they're very simple, and I've almost certainly run these exact EVs before. They give it as much attack investment as possible while getting a speed boost from Quark Drive. Pretty straightforward. 3 attacks. Got the 2 stabs, which are strong respectively into ice types and into terrestrialized Ogerpon. And then rock attacks are very strong into Trico's team. I've talked up the pairing of Ogerpon with a lot of ice types, but the downside of that is there are a lot of rock weaknesses that I might get a chance to pick on, to the point where I even considered running Terra Rock on this just for the offensive boost. But I think that the defensive Terra type of water is a little safer here. It does open up a weakness to a grass attack from Ogerpon, but if they don't read that, which they might well not do in an early situation in closed team sheets, then I at least get the one turn where I turn the Ivy Cudgel weakness into a resistance. Maybe I keep Iron Treads on the field a little longer. Plus, I get rid of the ground weakness against Donphan. I turn the water weakness against Melodic into a resistance. This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say I'm living with some trade-offs with most defensive Terra types that I can use, but those are the ones that I'm comfortable with on this Pokemon. The Clear Amulet, so I kind of just slapped that on because I saw that they had an Intimidate user, but the more that I think about it, the more that I feel like there's a very real chance that they bring like an Ogerpon Stantler mode. It wasn't something that I thought about early in my building, and so maybe I'm overcorrecting now that I've thought about it relatively late, but I think it makes a lot of sense into my team. I have a lot of taunt users, but a Follow Me Ogerpon can shut those down, and then Trick Room can potentially open up some very real vulnerabilities in the fast modes that I tend to bring with this team. So I need some kind of game plan into that, and I think that just throwing off Rock Slide with Donphan into the Ogre Pawn, or with, with Iron Treads. Donphan is the enemy this week. With Iron Treads into the Ogre Pawn is at least a starting point in like a Game 1 Trick Room matchup. Therefore, the Clear Amulet I do end up liking quite a bit because it blocks Intimidate from the Stantler. It also stops something like a Breaking Swipe from Sceptile, so I think it's worth having as a precaution. Up next, we have our I guess, team captain. Thunderous is back. I really did think about bringing Rain Dance on this team, and honestly, it was less to shut down the snow. I've basically just decided to live with snow this week and try to break through it with stuff like Iron Treads and something coming up later. But running Rain Dance would improve the Ogre Pawn Ivy Cudgel calcs quite a bit for this team. As it is, though, I didn't really feel like I had room for it. It's Thunderous. You have to make some sacrifices with the move slots. I want Electric Terrain to boost the Iron Treads, and maybe somebody else. I wonder who. Scary Face is here, as usual, for emergency speed control into something like an Unburdened Sceptile, or if things go wrong and Slush Rush Sandslash really gets going, this could be a good emergency button to have. Taunt, because even though I said that they might deny me a taunt into their Trick Room setter, I definitely want to try it if I think that there's a reasonable chance that it will work. Plus they have some other support Pokemon like Dedenne, like Melodic, that I might not want to allow to set up or get off very disruptive status moves into me. I think that Taunt is important to have on something this week. Wild Bolt Storm just for attack coverage as usual. Again, a very physically bulky set because I'm primarily concerned about taking hits from the likes of Ogre Pawn and Baxcalibur. That doesn't mean that the Melodic isn't a threat, but unless I let the Melodic have some free boosts, it doesn't have the kind of offensive output that those other guys do, and so they were much higher priorities in my calking. I also have the Terrafire, to more easily take an Ivy Cudgel. In fact, I brought Terrafire on a few Pokemon this week. It more easily takes an Ivy Cudgel or something like a Woodhammer or Horn Leech. But also, Baxcalibur gets Ice Shard, and I'm pretty sure Sandslash gets Ice Shard, so I like having Terra types that resist Ice on a few of my Pokemon, especially where they're weak to Ice. That said, I do have this Berry here because there's just no other way that Thunderous is taking an Ice attack from Baxcalibur unless I commit the Terra. I don't feel like I need a Covert Cloak or something like that this week. They did just pick up a Fake Out user, but I think that the emergency button into ice attacks is more important if I'm trying to keep Thunderous on the field to set things up with the likes of Electric Terrain, maybe a Taunt. You get the idea. Up next, you'll be shocked to find out it's Iron Leaves. Of course, since I'm bringing Electric Terrain stuff, I have brought both of my future Paradox Pokemon this week. Not a lot of Psyblade. I'm not sure there are any Psyblade resistances before Terra on the opposing team now that they've dropped Alolan Meowth. I could look at the roster, but running through it in my head right now, there's one, Alolan Sandslash. But that aside, as usual, nobody really wants to take a Psyblade this week. This is, again, just like the Iron Treads, a spread that I've definitely run before and just maximizes attack investment while getting a speed boost from Quark Drive, so that we can get that little leg up on something like Ogre Pawn or unboosted Sceptile. The Sacred Sword covers the Sandslash or a Terra Dark Pokemon. I don't feel like I need Leaf Blade in this matchup. It obviously hits Melodic very hard, and that's something to consider, but Psyblade should hit that very hard too, especially if I do get the Electric Terrain buff. Terra Fire for the same kinds of reasons we've talked about. It turns the fire and ice weaknesses into resistances, and importantly, it turns the ice shard weakness into a resistance so that they can't turn the speed control game around on me when I'm otherwise winning it. I have the booster energy despite the Electric Terrain game plan because I want... because terrain control might be an issue in this game. I think there's a very real chance that they bring Grookey. Like I said, it kind of felt like it was for me when they picked it up, and I don't think it is, but I do still think it makes some sense for them in this matchup. So Iron Leaves is also running the move Electric Terrain, as is Thunderous. I have 2 Electric Terrain setters to make it that much easier to keep the terrain up if the Grookey is otherwise giving me trouble. And with the booster energy, Iron Leaves can stay faster than an Ogre Pawn or an unboosted Sceptile and get its Electric Terrain up even after having lost the buff from an electric terrain that the opponent has taken away. So if I set electric terrain up, Iron Leaves gets a speed boost, opponent switches in Grookey, they get their grassy terrain, the booster energy then activates, and Iron Leaves still has the extra speed to get the electric terrain back up, or just throw off a Psyblade, as the case may be. Up next, we are bringing back a friend from last week. We're bringing Beartic. It's kind of a fun Pokemon to bring this week because I know that Trico wanted to draft it, and I just and was disappointed when I got there first. But of course, it also has potential to turn their own hail around back on them. Since I'm running Slush Rush this time instead of Swift Swim, which is all the more reason that I'm not bringing Rain Dance. I'm just running back a loaded... Oh, that is supposed to have Icicle Spear instead of Icicle Crash. I need to fix that because I am just running back a loaded dice set that is supposed to have Icicle Spear. Good thing I record these, or I might not have caught that. The Rock Slide, again, rock type attacks are very strong into my opponent's team. Brick Break not only breaks an Aurora Veil, though there is that, but it also targets a double weakness on the Alolan Sandslash. Unfortunately, there was an error in the dock, and I started my prep thinking that Alolan Sandslash is slower than Beartic. It's not. It's like maybe 15 base speed points higher. The dock was just mistaken, but even so, I might get a chance to throw off an attack into it, and Slush Rush Beartic should outrun most of what else they have in Snow. And then the Electric Terra Blast is here to threaten Melodic. But yeah, note to self, fix that first move. I don't want to show up with loaded dice Icicle Crash. And finally, I thought about bringing Persian off the bench this week. It's the only Pokemon I think that I haven't used yet, and its sort of disruptive, fake out, speed control, stat lowering game plan can be very strong into a lot of the bulky setup support Pokemon that my opponent has. I think there's a very real case for Persian this week, but I didn't really see the specific game plan. As I started thinking through concrete details a little more, it wasn't quite coming together, and so I decided to just be solid and bring my best Pokemon, and so I'm bringing Sylveon, third Terra Fire Pokemon of the week, so half of my team is running that Terra type. You know the reasons at this point, except in this case it also gives Sylveon the Fire type Terra Blast to cover mainly Alolan Sandslash, that being their Fairy resist. Hearthflame Ogerpon also resists Fairy, but it doesn't resist Fire before it Terras. If it does Terra, then Sylveon's just not the answer to it. What can you do? You know why there's a lot of physical bulk. I actually was originally planning to run less of that and put more investment into special attack, but this takes something really well. I think it might be Ogerpon Stomping Tantrum after I Terra Sylveon, which is maybe a little out in the weeds, but they have a very strong physically offensive team. I have a lot of physical bulk on my guys. Is what it is. You know the deal by now. You know the Terra Fire. I've still never had a week that I didn't want to bring Throat Spray Sylveon. I feel like there must be some matchup where there's a better item than that, but I haven't found it yet. And then Hyper Voice and Terra Blast for the offensive coverage, and I'm bringing Yawn again to disrupt something like an Ogerpon setup, a Baxcalibur setup, a Melodic setup. There are a lot of Pokemon that I might want to force into situations where they have to switch out. It also might help me play through Trick Room, given that I will try to use Thundurus to deny Trick Room if they let me, but I don't think they're going to let me, and I might get into a situation where I just have to kind of throw off Rock Slides to stall with Protect, and maybe play the Terra Mind game with Terra Water Iron Treads. It also helps if I can take a hit and force an offensive threat out with Yawn. But there it is. That's all the talk. Nothing left to do but play the set, which you can watch on my channel, and then also watch on Trico's to see both sides of it. How about that? But yeah, I'll be back when it's time. Alright, it's time to face the cold. Except they didn't bring the Alolan Ninetales. That's interesting. They really did go into the grassy terrain mode. So my Slush Rush Beartic looks a little silly here, which is okay. It's just one Pokemon, and I can only bring 4 to a game. I think it still was a reasonable countermeasure into the snow that they could very easily have brought, but much less likely now that I bring Beartic to a game. So they got Melodic, Ogerpon, Baxcalibur, Stantler, Sceptile, and Grookey. So actually it's pretty much what I was talking about in the builder. With the grassy terrain, potential grassy glide, probably unburden stuff, and the potential for a trick room mode if they want. I think I lead Tornadus and Iron Treads into a possible trick room setup. I bring Iron Leaves for sure, and with the Intimidate, well, I don't know. Sylveon is strong into the Baxcalibur, or at least forces a Terra out of it. Not that strong into the Ogerpon. I'm going to bring Magmar game 1, but I have Sylveon as an option game 2. So, Sceptile Grookey lead. It is unburdened stuff. Of course, I don't have the Covert Cloak on my, what's it called? My Thundurus this week. They're probably going to fake out Thundurus. I'm just going to switch to Magmar right now. There's not really much that these guys are likely to do that Magmar is all that worried about, and maybe I get a Flame Body Burn on the Grookey or something, and I'll just protect Iron Treads and see what they do. Just detect the Sceptile. They do fake out the Magmar, don't get the burn. That's okay. I don't see much of a threat. I mean, Grookey, how high is Grookey's attack stat? It can't be very high. It's a first stage starter. I don't see much of a threat to my Iron Treads here. I don't think I want to just throw off a Heat Wave because I might switch in the Baxcalibur. So in fact, anticipating that they might do something like that, I think I'm just going to Helping Hand Rock Slide. I don't think they want to keep both of these Pokemon in here. So it's possible we catch the Ogerpon or the Baxcalibur with the Rock Slide, and if not, we chip something at least. Unless they have a way to knock Iron Treads out right now, which would be a pretty unpleasant surprise for me here. It's Terra Electric Sceptile, which is bold. The Rock Slide does decent damage, flinches the Grookey, so that's nice, and it's Dragon Tail. Okay. I'll bring my Thundurus back in. I didn't switch. I still am really hesitant to throw off a Heat Wave. Although getting rid of the Grookey would be nice. I think I'm just going to switch Iron Treads back in and get up my Electric Terrain. They can pivot with the Grookey if they want, but I think having my proper terrain in place will be helpful here. And of course, that's part of why I brought the Iron Leaves, because I have 2 Electric Terrain setters instead of just 1. Okay, so they now don't get priority Grassy Glide. I can try to get off a big hit into the Ogerpon. They might want a Spiky Shield this turn while they pivot with the Grookey. Do I have Protect on Thundurus? I don't. Okay. I think... Here's the thing. I think maybe I just high horsepower into the Ogerpon anyway, in case they let me. Of course, it's not weak to high horsepower before Terra, and it is weak to Rock Slide. The Rock Slide spread damage isn't going to KO anyway, and I like Terra. Actually, no, I'm going to Rock Slide because I'm pretty sure that's not a contact move, so if they Spiky Shield here, and I think there's a very good chance that they will, then I don't take that chip. And the problem with that is... Okay, no, I think I have a safer play. The problem with that is if they Ivy Cudgel and just blast my Iron Treads out of here. I think I want to Protect and switch to Magmar. I guess that does make it easier for them to pivot with the Grookey, but yeah, I was pretty sure that Spiky Shield was coming, and now I can follow me and Rock Slide pretty safely. I'd be surprised if they didn't bring Stomping Tantrum, given that the Magmar is such a threat to a lot of the offense from their team. But we'll see. But the Grookey not switching out means that they can't get their terrain back up right now, and yeah, their Protect cooldown is on. We knock out the Grookey, so we win the terrain war for this game, and they do just go for Ivy Cudgel. So that's all pretty good. The Baxcalibur is here now. The Rock Slide isn't doing as much as I'd like, admittedly, but I think well, here's the thing. Magmar does not take a Glaive Rush, at least not with significant investment. We know that from the calculator. I can Terra Fairy Magmar, which is my out for that, but that then takes away its Ivy Cudgel resistance. I can Terra Water Iron Treads, resist one Ivy Cudgel. They probably won't throw off a Glaive Rush into my Steel type. Helping Hand, Rock Slide, and then Electric Terrain is still up. I'm still faster on the next turn, and I can switch Thunderous back in to get the terrain up again the next turn. I think that's my play here. So I think I Terra Water, Rock Slide, Helping Hand. Let's see. I get the Spiky Shield. Get decent chip on the Baxcalibur, but oh, we do take a Glaive Rush. Maybe I was calculating like Choice Bandit or something, I don't know. But don't get the chip on Ogerpon that I was kind of hoping for there. I think they're going to protect the Baxcalibur, and they're going to try to wipe out my Iron Treads. So I'm just going to protect here and switch to Thunderous, keep my terrain up. They actually switched the Baxcalibur out. But yeah, using my Terra there on their Spiky Shield has admittedly made my Iron Treads a bit more vulnerable. And Horn Leech from the I keep wanting to call it Walking Wake because they nicknamed it Walking Nuke. Horn Leech from the Walking Wake is potentially undoing a lot of my progress here. The Sceptile doesn't have a speed boost anymore. I can knock it out here. I don't know that that's super worthwhile. I feel like I need damage on the Ogerpon. I can sack Magmar and then get somebody back in. I actually don't hate that. I think I'm going to sack Magmar, get my terrain back up, and then I might even bring in Iron Leaves for the single target Psyblade next. Okay, as they go for the Dragon Tail, so I have Iron Leaves in regardless. Of course, I can't Terra it, so they can wipe it out with their thing, their Ivy Cudgel. They might Spiky Shield here, but I'm just going to Helping Hand Psyblade and try to nuke the nuke. Let's see. Yeah, as we do manage to do that with a crit. Lucky me. And we get the burn on Sceptile. That was a very fortunate turn right there. I'm just going to go Iron Treads here and try to finish them off with my 2 boosted Future Paradox Pokemon. So I think here I can High Horsepower into Sceptile and Psyblade into Baxcalibur. As the Ice Shard does about half, but the Psyblade does almost everything. And yeah, we can just finish it off here. I don't know if that crit mattered on the Ogerpon. I kind of hope it didn't because it's a cleaner win that way. But that was a tricky game for sure. Not sure what we're going to do game 2. The other thing is, they didn't bring the Stantler game 1. And Thunderous Iron Treads was my anti-Trick Room lead. I don't know if it's as good as I sort of mocked up, but that was the idea behind it. So, if they make that adjustment, I kind of don't want a different lead necessarily, do I? Although Sylveon is kind of an anti-Trick Room Pokemon as well. But I don't know if I have room to bring Sylveon. I mean, it would be good into the Baxcalibur, for sure. It's very physically bulky. It'd probably be good into the Sceptile, too, when they've shown the Leaf Blade and the Dragon Tail, and the Grookey. So there's probably actually a good case for Sylveon, but I don't know what Pokemon I would drop for it. Everybody felt important in that game 1. The Ogerpon showed Horn Leech, Spiky Shield, and Ivy Cudgel, but I don't think we saw its 4th move. It's probably not Stomping Tantrum at this point, so it could easily be Follow Me. Do I bring the same 4 guys? I think I'm going to. And we can bring Sylveon in game 3, if it comes to that, and it might well. But I'm just going to lead the same lead, see if they make an adjustment. They do bring the Melodic and the Stantler, that's interesting. I'll just taunt Stantler and switch to... Well, okay, am I worried about a Scald? I'm going to taunt Stantler and protect. That might be too passive. I'm going to taunt Stantler. I'm going to do it anyway, because I might be worried about a Scald. They just protect. So, okay, switching to Iron Leaves might have been the play there. They do let me get the taunt on Stantler, and it goes for Light Screen and not Trick Room. I mean, with Sceptile and Ogerpon here, probably I shouldn't have worried as much as I did about a Trick Room mode. Yeah, they were going for screens there. Here... I'm going to get up my Electric Terrain. I'm going to switch to Iron Leaves and hope that I'm not throwing its attack stat away. But if not, then that offensive threat is potentially very powerful here. Of course, they can pivot the Stantler out and get an Intimidate off, since they know my Clear Amulet is on Iron Shreds. They do have Scald, but they go for it into Thunderous. And now... Oh, and it's the Terra Dragon Melodic. Which does make me a little bit less inclined to throw off a Wild Bolt Storm than I was a moment ago. But the chip might still be good. But I think I want to preserve Thunderous. I'm going to switch to Magmar. I can protect and waste a turn of my terrain, or I can just get off a Psyblade into... I could even Terra Fire here. How much damage is the Melodic going to do with Scald? I don't think its base special attack is that high, is it? And then I don't have to worry about a burn. On the other hand, I'd turn off my Wild Charge resistance. If they double target. But Terra Dragon Melodic, I don't have a ton of good ways to remove that. I think I'm going to do it. Oh, right. I think I'm... If I throw, I throw, but I think I'm going to Terra Fire here to make sure I can't be burned. Psyblade does only about a third. Lunge. Stantler. That's not a move I thought about. That's interesting. Oh, and I don't have the Swords Dance this week, and they could have Recover, so that's not great for me. I'm gonna try Helping Hand Psyblade and see how much that does. But yeah, it only does 30%, -1. They can fish for a Paralysis with Body Slam, but they don't get it. Icy Wind on the Melodic. It's still gonna be slower than Iron Leaves, I'm sure. It might protect here, so I'm going to follow me. Just play it a little safe. This does protect. Getting rid of it sure would be nice. We get off their lunge into Magmar. We get the burn. We don't. But I can just make the same play again. I might want to pivot Iron Leaves out pretty soon. Although, the Electric Terrain is going to wear off this turn. But I can use my booster energy and get the terrain back up. I didn't show that tech in game 1. The Melodic is gone. Magmar's almost gone. Stantler is still not burned. Wild Charge, Lunge, Body Slam, Light Screen. They were cooking. Oh, we can see what they have in the back now. Starting with the Ogerpon. I don't really have safe switches. Is a significant problem here. They could definitely still win this. I'm going to follow me and Electric Terrain. As Magmar goes down. And so does Iron Leaves. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance I'll lose this one. I can't Terra the Iron Shreds. And Wild Bolt Storm. And just get that Rock Slide flinch. That'll do it, right? That's just not doing enough damage. And I think Wild Bolt Storm just missed most of their guys. It did. Okay, Ivy Cudgel into Thunderous, but then they also have the Lunge. So unless I get very lucky with flinches here, it's a game 2 loss. Oh, we flinched the Ogerpon. They don't get the Body Slam Para. Hold on, hold on. Might still be in this. Come on, Iron Treads. They might Spiky Shield and switch out and stall out the terrain. I can't really do anything about that. Or they can just dodge the Rock Slide, and you know what? They deserve it at this point. And we get paralyzed. So yeah, that'll do it. We're going to game 3 for, I think, the first time all season. So that's fun. What do I do here? Okay. The Stantler melodic combination was a problem. For sure. It's a smaller problem if I bring Sylveon. What if I do... The thing is, if I lead Sylveon, they don't Terra the melodic, do they? What if I do Thundurus, Magmar, Sylveon, Iron Leaves? That's kind of weird, but... Okay, they don't lead the Stantler this time, they lead Baxcalibur. Just hard switch to Sylveon, I think. And there's not much for Magmar to do here. I'll just throw off a Break for a bit of chip. Whoa! Sylveon takes a beefy Icicle Crash. Perhaps I didn't think that play through. But... And of course the Melodic isn't going to Terra now. But I can just follow me Hyper Voice. This isn't looking good. Not gonna lie. They switched to the Stantler, which they had in the back. Icy Wind is going to chip both of my Mons. Makes sense, makes sense. Hyper Voice does decent damage even before the Throat Spray. Let's make the same play again. Get their Light Screen this time, unfortunately. But that's still not bad damage. Just sack Magmar here. Take one more Scald, probably. Okay. I'm gonna go for a Wild Bolt Storm and a Hyper Voice and just try to pick up a couple of KOs. Fingers crossed. We did double miss Wild Bolt Storm earlier, but this time we double hit. And we know they have Baxcalibur in the back. Of course, they haven't Terra'd yet. And it's this guy as well. Don't love the chances that they let Sylveon get off an attack here. But, you know what I can do? Well, okay, here's the thing. Well, no, I can Terra Fire Sylveon and probably live an Ice Shard and get an attack off, but I think I need to save my Terra for Iron Leaves. Because it's so much stronger as a Fire type here than it is as a Grass type. So I'm just gonna throw... I'm gonna Detect and Wild Bolt Storm. Try to fish for Paralysis or Chip. As it turns out to be Terra Electric Baxcalibur, so we won't be paralyzing that. They just go right into Thundurus. Okay, they actually attack both of my Mons, so that's good. Thundurus lives another turn. I think I almost have to... get my Electric Terrain up here, unfortunately, because I would like to go for another Wild Bolt Storm, but I don't think I can do that right now. I also don't think I have a way to save the Sylveon. I suppose if they go for the same moves again, they could miss Icicle Crash. But they don't. Oh, are they going to activate my berry? Let's go! We survived the Icicle Crash. Alright, and now it's Psyblade spam time. We're going to Terrifier. We're going to Sideblade the Baxcalibur to try to get rid of it. They'll probably just Ice Shard into Thunderous. I don't want to Protect, but I'll try to get a Wild Bolt Storm off as they do that. They survive the Sideblade. That's really bad. That's... yeah, I think we don't do damage quickly enough at this point. I'll try to get rid of the Baxcalibur. But yeah, I think they got me. Yeah, we don't take another Ivy Cudgel. So unless we get the Sideblade of all Sideblades here... we're going to stall out a turn of Electric Terrain. Unless we land the Sideblade of all Sideblades here, it's over. And it is. Maybe a crit would have done it. But, alright. First loss of the season, but that was a good set. I really enjoyed that. And if we meet again in playoffs, I'm clearly going to have to cook harder. But for now, we just keep moving. 3 weeks left in the season. And let's see what we can do.